Hello, and welcome back to another fun-filled episode of the Hammercast. I'm your host, Alex, the Hebrew Hammer Salkin, and today I'm going to be talking all about the case for building muscle. Now, I would have figured that I wouldn't have had to make such a case, but some people need convincing, and I'm here to do that job for you. Now, before we get started, I want to make sure that I mention this. I've got a new free ebook that I am cooking up right now that I think is going to be pretty awesome, maybe even revolutionary, at least to your training. I mean, there's nothing completely brand new in there, nothing new under the sun, as the author of Ecclesiastes pointed out. But nevertheless, it's something that if you don't know or if you are not practicing, you are going to get a lot out of it. It's going to be called the 9-Minute Bodyweight Strength Challenge. And I can't tell you any more than that because I don't want to give anything away. But what I will tell you is that it's going to be awesome. And also, my current free ebook is going to be turned into a paid product in short order. It is the 99 Kettlebell and Bodyweight book, meaning you get 99 kettlebell and bodyweight workouts. It's my best workouts that I've put together over the years. It's all collected in one place, so you don't have to go hunting around and searching for them, many of which you wouldn't be able to find anyway because they were only made available pardon me, to people on my email list. And if you were to get this free ebook, you would put you on my daily email list, which I think you will get a lot out of because that is where all my best, brightest, no BS, top shelf material goes out on a daily basis. Not on social media, although I do put a lot of stuff out there on social media. But no, it's on the email list. That's where you want to be. So once again, and you can click the link in the description or the comment box, depending on where you're consuming this piece of information, and you can get a hold of that. Now again, once my new ebook comes out, the 99 Kettlebell and Bodyweights Workouts book is going to become a paid product. So I would download that now while you still can. And again, you'll get on my email list, which is where the only place where you can get my challenges, my workouts, programs, guides, tutorials, courses, all sorts of good stuff. Online coaching as well. So keep that in mind, all right? And do not forget about it. All right, now we're going to get on with the show after I take a drink of water. All right, now first things first, let me recount a story from my more youthful days. I'm still youthful, but there was a time, of course, at which I was even more youthful. I remember, this was right around the time I was getting into strength training. So this must have been like 2008, 9, 10, somewhere thereabouts. And I was talking to a friend, and I was trying to convince him that in his training, because he was doing a lot of working out, but it was all like cardio and stuff like that, I was trying to convince him that he really needs to work on building strength. And he said, well, what do I need to get strong for? And I was like shocked. I really just didn't have a response. Like what do you need to be weak for, man? You need to get strong. Now, I don't need to convince you to get strong. You understand the value of getting strong. You know, it's the ability to exert more control over your life, to be able to handle whatever life throws at you. And, of course, it also makes you a more useful person in general. But there's a laundry list of reasons why you should be strong, but that's not what this podcast is about. This particular episode is about why you should build muscle. Because believe it or not, I have similarly run into people who are skeptical about why they should bother building muscle, meaning they've already been convinced that they need to get strong. But, why should they build muscle? I think what part of it is maybe unspoken, but I think it's that people don't really know what to think about when they think about building muscle, because they think about, like Arnold Schwarzenegger. The dude was just absolute giant, like packed with muscle, or Ronnie Coleman, same thing. They're thinking, oh, well, the pursuit of building muscle means that I've got to try to look like these guys, and that's not the case at all. There are a lot of reasons to build muscle, and they all tie in with, or most of them tie in with, what your goals, either your primary or secondary goals are to begin with. And first things first, I want to talk about what I think is probably, if I could only give somebody who liked strength training one reason to build muscle, it would be to build more strength. There's a great quote in Jeff Newport's book, Kettlebell Muscle, and it is from Vladimir Zatsiorsky, who was a very famous Soviet sports scientist. And he pointed out in his book, The Science and Practice of Strength Training, the capacity of a muscle to produce force depends on its physiological cross-sectional area, and particularly on the number of muscle fibers in the muscle and cross-sectional areas of fibers. So in other words, what that means is that the stronger and bigger the muscle is itself, the easier it is to get strong. And this is something that, again, I think that if you have no other reason to get strong, that is it. I'm sorry, no other reason to build muscle, that is it right there. The fact that a bigger muscle means more potential to get strong is pretty huge. And one of the reasons why this is so important is because, and this is another thing I learned from Jeff many years ago, is that you can very roughly break strength into kind of two very broad categories. One is systemic strength, the other is structural strength. And systemic strength is your nervous system's efficiency and ability to contract the muscles harder, improve the coordination between associated muscle groups. So for example, if you're doing a deadlift, lifting the weight off the ground, you don't want your knees locking up before your hips. Everything's got to be coordinated, right? And you can build a very efficient nervous system and you can get to a certain degree of strength, but eventually you kind of tap out your resources for getting stronger nervous system wise. And the stronger you want to get, you have to start to specialize in only one or two movements. And you'll see this, in fact, in let's say Olympic lifters who are really good at the clean and jerk and the snatch, to the point where it's just astonishing to watch them lift, but they're really only specialized to do those two things. And I mean the lighter weight classes in particular. Guys like Naim Soleimanoglu, who's one of the first guys ever to clean and jerk 3 times his body weight overhead. I mean, it's not a strength skill almost anybody is ever going to be able to work up to. 3 times body weight overhead, unreal. But that's an extremely high level of systemic strength. Now, that might be good for athletes who are specialists, like Olympic lifters, but if you want to become stronger, it would serve you well to at least periodically focus on actually intentionally building some muscle. And the other thing, there are a couple of things here, but another one that's very important is that if you've been doing low rep strength training for a while, let's say 3 to 5 reps, and for 5 to 10 sets, something like that, you're going to get to a point again where it's you just tap out your resources and you butt up against something that's called the Law of Accommodation. And the Law of Accommodation is basically a law that says that if you're given a constant stimulus, your body's response to it will start to decrease over time. So what that means is that, let's take the military press, for example. You're always doing sets of 3 to 5. You get to a point where your body says, it hasn't really killed us, so we'll make as minimal an adaptation as necessary just so that this guy can do what he wants, right? So again, you'll get to a point where the nervous system is saying, there's only so much extra strength that you really need, and you're going to find that you're going to either make progress so unbelievably slowly that it's just going to be incredibly frustrating, or you're just going to hit a plateau and you're not going to get any further at all. And so what you need to do is you need to change the stimulus a bit. And one of the ways that you can do that is by changing the rep range. So this is a pretty minor change overall, because you can stick with the same exercises. Let's say we'll use the military press as an example. And rather than doing 3 to 5 reps, maybe you go a little bit lighter. Let's say you're doing 3 to 5 reps with a 24 kilo bell. And let's say you decide to go a little lighter. You're going to go with a 20 kilo kettlebell. So instead of 53 pounds, you're going to be doing 44-pound military presses. And you're going to start pressing it for sets of 8. And then let's say a week after that, it'll be sets of 10. And then sets of 12, right? So you're going to start building your muscle a bit, and you do that for a few weeks, and eventually you'll go back to the standard military press with a heavier weight, and you're going to go back to the protocol you did before, and you're going to find that you can start making progress once again. So this is something that you have to consider, because if you're always doing the same thing over and over again, you're not always going to get the same results that you got right from the beginning. Your body gets used to it, and then it doesn't want to dole out any more strength gains. So you got to be aware of that. All right? And you know, this is true also if you were to change exercises. I gave the example of just changing the rep range so that you can see, you know, very, very straightforward way to do that. But likewise, if you were to go from, let's say, I don't know, let's say primarily working on military presses to working on like an incline press, you know, not as easy to do with kettlebells, but it can be done. But exact same thing. So that's something that you definitely want to keep in mind. But there are some other reasons too that I think people should keep in mind for why to build muscle. Now, a big one is that as you age, and particularly in your 40s, 50s, and beyond, there is a phenomenon known as sarcopenia, or muscle wasting, basically, that starts to happen whether you like it or not. And the only way to prevent it, you'll lose something like 3 to 5% per year, I think. And then after a certain age, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's in your 50s, you can lose up to 10% of your muscle mass every year if you are not actively working on keeping it on and building it. So what that means is that you start to lose some of the lean muscle tissue that keeps you healthy, strong, and metabolically active. So, you know, muscle tissue it needs a lot of energy. So, for example, the leaner that you, or the more muscle you have, the leaner the easier it is to get leaner, because it's got to eat through some of these fat stores. If you don't have a lot of muscle, you're going to run into a real problem in terms of losing fat. So if that's a consideration for you, it's another thing that you might want to keep in mind. But it is something that is not difficult to fight against. You just have to make it your focus a couple times a year. And again, it doesn't even have to be like a 3-month program per se. It could be 6 weeks, you know, and provided you're doing stuff to keep your muscle on, you're going to be all right. But sarcopenia is something that really creeps up on a lot of people, and you do not want that. Now, another one is that you can take a licking and keep on ticking. And what I mean by that is that if you were to fall and, you know, crash into the ground, it hurts a lot more if you're bony and you're really skinny. Whereas if you are muscular, you've got a little extra padding that helps prevent issues like this. And this really goes right along with the sarcopenia issue, because when you get older and your lean tissue starts to reduce, you're at a greater risk of reduced mobility. Your bones can get frail, and you know, if you're falling and getting hurt, it's only a matter of time before you really get seriously hurt, and then it makes it a lot harder for you to be physically active at all. And the best way to avoid that, again, is just putting on a little bit of muscle. And again, when I'm talking about muscle, I'm not saying you have to turn into like Jay Cutler or Ronnie Coleman or Dorian Yates, right? If you're not familiar with any of these guys, look them up. They're just tremendous. A little bit of extra muscle is all we're talking about. And believe me, you're not going to accidentally work that hard that you're going to look like any of these guys. So really, don't stress yourself. All right. Now, the last thing that I would point out is that you also, well, we'll say this is the second to the last thing, because the last thing is going to be a pretty obvious one, I think. But second to the last thing is, if you are muscular and you look like you can handle yourself, you're less likely to get messed with by people. And you know, I don't think there's like roving. Well, okay, there are roving bands of bullies, you know, running around this country as we speak. But it's not like this is something that you're going to encounter necessarily every day. But think about like a mugger, or somebody who is just looking for an easy victim to start something with, walking down the street. If you look like you know what you're doing, you look like you can handle yourself, you look pretty physically capable, they're not going to come after you. They're just going to keep walking. This is something worth considering, because if you are demure and you are skinny, I don't know if there are any statistical reasons to believe you're going to get more likely to be messed with, but realistically speaking, if you ever see videos of people getting, mugged or robbed at robbed at gunpoint, you have no choice really, but let's say mugged or messed with by, a couple of no good nicks. They're not going for like the big, huge, like 6'4", 250 pounds of solid muscle dude, because even if the guy doesn't have any fighting skills, they just don't want to find out. It's always the smaller people and the people who look skinny and non-athletic that they're trying to mess with. But then the last thing is, of course, you just look good. And seriously, who does not want to look better? I think that the best reason to build muscle when you're younger is because it'll make you look good and it'll improve your confidence. But even as you get older, like you like looking at yourself in the mirror and seeing something that you like seeing. You don't want to look at yourself in the mirror and be like, ugh, I'm going to turn the light off, right? So consider this, because if there's anything that will keep you training, it's feeling good about yourself. And you're not going to be doing muscle building forever, meaning probably what you'll want to focus on is maybe a short period of time, training to build some extra muscle. And then, going back to training for low rep, heavy strength, is a very good cycle to go through, just cycling between these two things. But yeah, you want to actually look like you lift. Like, you don't want to be the guy who's like, oh yeah, I can lift X, Y, and Z amount and such weight, and people are like, huh, it doesn't look like you even lift at all. Sure, it's nice to be able to surprise people, but it's better to look good while you're surprising people, in my correct opinion. So there are a lot of other reasons to build muscle, but I think that for an under 20-minute show, these are some pretty good reasons to start off with. So consider this, keep this amply in mind. And by the way, if you happen to be on my email list, I'm going to have a very cool muscle building program coming back out. I released it for the first time last year. I've got a program that I have lovingly called Gainsgiving. And the concept behind it is that, we're entering the holiday season and this year, I'm sure there's going to be extra celebrations because everybody's been apart for so long. But it's going to be, you think about Thanksgiving to New Year's, we tend to eat a lot more. Some estimates, I don't know how accurate these are, some estimates are that we can put on up to 5 pounds during this period of time. And an excess amount of calories is a great way to put on more muscle. So this really coincides nicely with the holiday season. You can eat this extra calories. Now, obviously, you want to put as many of those calories to good use as possible by building muscle. And of course, you don't want to only eat junk food, but that's going to be a part of it, and that's going to be very helpful in building muscle. And once you finish that, you can always work on leaning out. And next thing you know, you'll look leaner and more muscular by stacking a muscle building program on top of a leanness building program. So again, Gainsgiving is coming out very, very soon. I think you will enjoy it greatly. It had a lot of really good reviews when I did it last year. So keep this in mind. And again, if you are on my email list, you'll automatically get a notification about it. If you're not on my email list, you will not be able to get it anywhere anyway. So just something to consider. All right. Thank you very much for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode. And of course, as always, have fun and happy training.